네, 여러분, 자 이제부터 본격적으로 세션을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 원활한 진행을 위해서 질의응답은 모든 발표가 끝난 뒤에 별도의 질의응답 시간에 진행될 예정입니다. Now let us begin session 1. For smooth proceedings, the Q&A session will be held after all presentations are completed. We kindly ask for your understanding and cooperation. 자, 첫 번째 세션 주제는 기후기술과 에너지전환입니다. 이번 세션에서는 기후기술이 에너지전환을 어떻게 가속화하고 있는지, 그리고 각국의 정책적, 산업적 대응 방향을 중심으로 심도 있는 논의가 이어질 예정입니다. 오늘 세션 1의 좌장님을 소개해드리겠습니다. 이홍기 우석대학교 산학부총장이자 한국수소 및 신에너지학회 회장님께서 오늘 좌장을 맡아주시고 좌장님께서 발표자와 패널을 소개하시면서 세션 진행하시겠습니다. 여러분 좌장님께 큰 박수 보내주시기 바랍니다. 네, 이께서 진행해 주시면 되겠습니다.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for introduction myself. So now we open the first session, climate technology and energy transition. And first plenary speaker is Ambassador of Denmark, Michael Hemnitz Winter. Thank you for presentation, and we already passed the time, so it's preferable for us less than 10 minutes of presentation. It's helpful for you because we are busy and we are already circulated this presentation file. So would you please introduce about the Denmark? Yeah.
Thank you very much. The story about Danish green transition is not a short one, but I will do my best to not make it too long. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Jiang, Chairman of the Climate Foundation, to have me here today. I was very impressed with the former speeches, especially those political signals we got from Korea, how much consensus and leadership there is in Korea to help getting green transition and reduce carbon emission and basically create a sustainable world for all of us. My job today is to give a little bit of a story of Denmark and how we have transformed our society. That is basically the three words I would use in that connection. That is partnership, persistence, and trust. Now I'll see if I can get this one to work. No. Oh, yes. Basically, the story of green transition in Denmark is mostly about energy efficiency, and also moving towards renewable energy. I think we heard good arguments for different energy types. Denmark is not using nuclear power, but we are using a lot of other sources. If you see the way that Danish energy consumptions have developed, you can also see that we shifted from oil to coal and later on to natural gas, which happened in the 70s and 80s after a major oil crisis in the 70s. We discovered natural gas in North Sea in the 60s, and then when the Brundtland report came, everybody, including our political system, became very aware of the environment, but also on the consequences of CO2 emission. Then we had in 2008 to 2009 the financial crisis, and as the former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon mentioned, the very important Paris Declaration, and we were, as you may imagine, one of the signatories countries to that. Now our energy concern is very much influenced by Russia's unjust and illegal war in Ukraine. all put together, when you look at this figure, is that our Danish energy transition from fossils towards more sustainable energy supply has been driven by various external and internal factors. Now, in the 70s and 80s, Denmark was very much depending on import of energy. Basically, 90% of our energy was imported, and much of it was from the Middle East. And after the second oil crisis in 1979, we had to diversify and reduce our risk from this source. So we focused on developing our own energy sources, and fortunate enough, we had oil fields around the same places where we had sourcing the gas, natural gas. And we also had to look at how energy production could be done in another way, from a centralized to a decentralized model, as you can see from the two figures from 1985, where you see the energy production was compared to today, where it is building much smaller local combined heat and power plants. And that also means that you can have greater feedstock flexibility and security at the same time, and where oil and gas is not sufficient. It's also better in many ways to utilize the heat from power production locally as district heating. District heating technology has today developed into a great success story for Denmark in a very efficient use of energy. You can also see the interconnecting cables of our neighboring countries developed over time simultaneously to again diversify and secure energy supplies. These cables are both importing and exporting electricity, so the more variation you have in production, the more you can adjust with external sources and also export your oversupply of production of energy in your country. Denmark's green transition is very much also about the offshore wind, which I will later on tell a little bit about how we cooperate very closely with Korea. Offshore wind is a great wind resources for Denmark because we have a long coastal lines and mostly shallow waters, and offshore wind has a vast potential to even be developed further. It's a cornerstone in our green transition. In 1991, we built the first offshore wind farm in the world, later on modeled by many countries, and it was also the first mega project producing 160 megawatt. It definitely provided very clear evidence to everyone that wind energy can both be built at scale and can also be adjusted in consumption. Now, the extensive capacity of renewable energy in 2025 now covers 56% of the total energy use in Denmark. In fact, on a very windy days, electricity consumption is covered 100% by renewables, and we can therefore export our excess energy. In the autumn this year, we will tender a further 3 gigawatts offshore wind in Danish waters, enabling further electrification of our society. Now, our green story has also been coupled between renewables and then a very, very strong and high increase in energy efficiency. Because wind and solar supply most of the needed green energy to the system, but it's in the way to use the best possible way and to get as much work possible out of it. We also focus on the energy efficiency, both in our housings and in our industry. And that is very important for meeting the demands we have set for the climate goal. One industry's waste stream, such as heat or CO2, can be used in another industry's valuable feedstock, Therefore, sector coupling is likewise important to create these energy systems. When we go to a state where energy efficiency, sector coupling that I just mentioned, and renewable together, it needs to be looked upon completely different way. For example, addressing existing technical and institutional barriers is needed if you want to make that combination. Now, one of the strongest, sorry, I have one more before that. Apologize. That happens all the time, doesn't it? One of the strongest graphs that usually illustrates Danish, I think, now I'm from Denmark, impressive decoupling of economic growth and energy use. If you look at this one, you can see that we have had a very steady growth since 1990. That is 35 years of economic growth in Denmark, which is, of course, both moving within the industrial production, service, and so on, but certainly is economic growth. When you hear the argument very often that we cannot afford to go to renewable energy or reduce our CO2 emission because we need economic growth to create employment and economy for our country, I think we need to look at it more carefully, because we have certainly, with other countries too, provided very, very clear evidence that it is possible to decouple and actually have economic growth if you constantly think about reducing the wasted energy use. And you do that with innovation, technology, and you do that with the energy that you use. Since we are still working on all of those factors that created this development, we certainly expect this difference between the graphs to continue in the future. Okay. Now, I think several speakers today mentioned that one country cannot do these things alone. And Denmark is certainly one of those countries that cannot do this alone. And we have partnered with many countries, including, of course, South Korea. So we have a very small population. We are 5.5 million people. I mean, I can't even see anybody else than me in here. Yeah, maybe one. So we are a very small population. And we emit only 0.1% of the total emission in the world. That doesn't mean that we don't need to do anything. We need to do our job. Mostly, we are therefore partnering with countries where we can both get inspiration and wisdom and innovation, but also share our own experiences, which is what I do right now. And I want to take just 5 minutes to explain, because it's relevant for all of you here, our cooperation with Korea. Denmark has a very strong, in our own country, partnership between the private sector and government. We simply walk hand in hand. We are a country that utilizes the strength of the private sector's innovation capacity and government regulations that are both incentives, disincentives, stick and carrot. And through our government-to-government cooperation that we have with Korea, a strategic cooperation we call GGA, Green Growth Alliance, we are having an umbrella that points to many, many cooperation. And the purpose of this cooperation is for both countries to learn. We learn how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions globally. We are opening and maturing markets for green technology, and we are strengthening cooperation of those where it has a strategic impact. The Green Growth Alliance was established in 2011, and while we speak, we are negotiating an extension because it runs out in 2025, and both our governments have shown very strong willingness to continue this very rewarding partnership. We work in an energy governance partnership, EGP, where renewable energy and energy efficiency collaboration exists between our two countries. Last slide, Mr. Chairman. This is the last slide, and I will then end in 1 minute. I hope that is okay.
Okay, so you have 1 minute left.
Thank you. I will use it.
Yeah, okay.
Just to show off a little bit here, because I think this illustrates one of the most important factors that drives both our national innovation and national development goals. We are bound by extremely ambitious climate goals that we share with our Nordic friends, but also certainly countries in Europe and other places. And that is driven by one climate act that is also an illustration of a political consensus in our parliament, which I also understand that Korea has, which is important to have long-term goals that are not interrupted by government change. That is one experience. I mean, that's easy for us to say that we should do. We know it's hard in many countries, but it's also a very important factor to maintain these ambitious climate goals. So these are the ones we have, and I think we are on the way towards them. I really thanks a lot for your patience, for your attention, and thank you for having me today explaining about Denmark. 감사합니다.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Michael Hemnitz-Winter, about his progressive presentation about wind power. So next speaker is Ambassador Georg Schmidt. Okay, so he was, before he came to Korea, he was ambassador of Bangkok, Thailand. Yeah, okay, would you please? Also, I give you 10 minutes and 1 minute extra is okay.
안녕하십니까? 주한독일대사 게오르크 슈미트입니다. 만나서 반갑습니다. Well, thanks a lot for being here. Everybody looks about APEC, but the whole room is filled with people, and it's not just trade and trade wars, but our real war, I feel, is to stop climate change and to mitigate that. So all of you coming here means that you care for that a lot, and a lot of was said about the climate, the Paris Agreement, and the spirit then and the spirit now, and unfortunately it's not the same spirit. But both Germany and Korea are in the process of preparing for the next the COP30, for the NDCs. We want to be as ambitious as we can, and we have, I'm quite sure that we will make everything that, despite a change of government, that we say, look, this is too important. This is not just one government or another. Maybe some tonality will change, but climate change will remain very, very important for us. My Danish colleague has already elaborated on how Denmark is doing that with wind power. Wind power is also very important in Germany. And it's something similar if I look at it like when you said, at some days, more than 100% of your energy comes from renewables. And we achieved the same as a highly industrialized country. And I remember in 1998, when we said we were going to get out of nuclear and we're going for renewables, people said, nice dream, another German romantic dream. We're not there yet, but we have achieved a lot. And I think only by deciding to want to go on that way, we have released a lot of energy, and you will hear some of the things that my Danish colleague explained also applied for the sector that I was supposed to speak today about hydrogen. Mainly the idea that you either have a centralized energy system with a few points and you distribute it, or you have a decentralized system which requires a very different way of thinking, a very different technology, a very different grid, and a very different political environment maybe also. Hydrogen, you know about the potential of the technology. I think Korea is also exploring it a lot. We want to achieve a reliable supply of Germany of hydrogen, which is green and sustainable. So we want to give our main financial support in Germany to green hydrogen. However, in the meantime, we know that we have to work with a lot of other forms of hydrogen. I will spare you all the different colors. We know it's basically like a bridge, a transition technology to get to where we want to get at the end of the day. Since 2020, we have our national hydrogen strategy, and in order to really map out all the different things that we want to be doing. And 2022, and again, this is the same as Denmark, our energy policy got a very strong hit by Russia's war of aggression. We relied a lot on Russian gas as a bridge technology, and this is not there anymore. So it gave us much stronger impetus to move forward. And my discussions in Korea, I often say, even if you're not green or dreaming, which I think it's not a dream, it's something that we have to make sure, otherwise our world become a nightmare. But even if you're not on that side of things, just think of it as energy autarky. You have a much higher level of autarky if you use the energy forms that are around you. And I think that's a very important argument also for Korea, being situated where you are and in the environment that you are in. So that gave a push. This NHS, it's not the National Health System, it's our National Hydrogen Strategy. It still applies and we are constantly updating it, but we want to make sure that investors know where the government wants to go, and we want to give the long-term stability, that you're not changing from one government to the other. Again, an element that you have also in the presentation of my Danish colleague. Investors need that, and investors need those conditions. And I'm saying it's not just technical conditions, it's also the regulatory framework. When we, for instance, had a delegation from Hamburg looking at the port of Busan, there were a lot of the discussions about, like, how do you regulate port technology? What are the conditions that you need in order to safely transmit hydrogen? And the government has to give these safety standards. Otherwise, commercial investors, they will be too scared, and rightly so. Who is responsible if something goes wrong? So governments have an important role to play, and I'm very glad that also members of the parliament were invited here to listen to that as lawmakers. So all this is fine and good. Well, how do we want to get there? We want to accelerate the market ramp-up of hydrogen. We want to ensure the efficient availability of hydrogen and its derivatives. At the moment, our electrolyzer capacity is quite low. We want to go from 5 gigawatts to at least 10 gigawatts. We want to develop an efficient hydrogen infrastructure. So by 2027 to 2028, we will set up a hydrogen startup grid with more than 1,800 kilometers of newly built or repurposed hydrogen pipelines in Germany. And again, we're not alone. We need to connect those in order to have efficiency with our neighboring countries who share a similar vision. So whatever I'm saying here for Germany, we cannot really achieve it without European consent. And then by 2030, we want to actually be in a situation in Germany that we can apply hydrogen in industry, for heavy-duty commercial vehicles, more so in aviation, maybe also the potential in shipping. This is more a technical discussion, what can be done and what is more useful than in others. And I think there it ties in with the advances in battery and technological progress. We might say, like, look, let's stop hydrogen on this level, let's rather go for other technology sources. So, and be open about this. We want to also support our companies to be leaders in that field. We have that ambition that we should go forward as suppliers of in the whole chain, the whole value chain of hydrogen technology. And for that, again, we need a uniform standard and regulations for that. All sounds fine and good, but what are the main challenges? First of all, it's the price. we are still not where we want to be. It's still too high. Fuel price insecurity is one big problem. One other problem is that gray hydrogen, the price is still tied to gas prices. So the price signal is not where we want it to be, and we have a philosophy that we do not want to get too much involved into the market, although the whole issue of climate change is a complete market failure. If market prices reflected the true costs of carbonized energy, we wouldn't be standing here. So we have to define a price and then get going from there. But since the price is where it is, we have a slow buildup in electrolyzers. And I think electrolyzers are one of the main components that actually people can see it, whether it's in commercial use or it's even in private homes. And there are problems with regulatory barriers, etc. How easy is it if you install a small system? What is the approval procedure? We want to streamline that and make it as easy as possible, yet as safely as is necessary for the safety of the consumers. We have a technical challenge, of course, with transferring existing gas pipelines into hydrogen gas pipelines. I'm sure the technical experts can talk a lot more about this. And to come to the international dimension of it, it's very important that we have to align whatever we do with our neighboring countries. And international cooperation is extremely relevant. Again, a parallel with wind. Korea is a strong partner for Germany, technologically advanced, with a will and the ability to go forward. I think we will both remain net importers of hydrogen, but we want to do a lot in our German-Korea energy partnership. So again, there's similar things that we do with Denmark, and I presume also with others, that we try to bring the experts together in a format that they can talk about it. In December next, we have the 6th Germany-Korea Hydrogen Conference, which will take place here in Seoul. And I'm very confident that we can go forward if there's a political will. And before you cut my microphone, you were promising me one more minute. Yeah. I would like to actually also make one point that's near and dear to my heart. One thing is the technology. But the other thing is that Korea and Germany and Denmark, we're democracies. We cannot just order, let this be done, let that be done. We have to spend the time, explain why it's been done, and then bring citizens along. That they say, look, this change is for the benefit of all of us. Maybe others can go faster. They can solve the technical issues. But we cannot do that. And that applies to many phases in our society. And that's why I think the German experience is very relevant to Korea, and the Korean experience is also relevant to us. Because Korean citizens will not just accept the government saying, here, tomorrow you do this, you do this, you do this. And it's better that way if citizens have a say. I fundamentally believe we can do better like that. And when you explain to citizens why go through all the trouble, look at the news, look at what happened in Jamaica, the storm, look at what happened in Korea, the fires. Many things cannot be seen when you read what experts write about the oceans. So we're doing this for ourselves, but very much also for our next generation. And we can do it. 할 수 있어요. 감사합니다.
네. Thank you, Ambassador Schmidt. 감사합니다. Now we open the panel discussion. So first, we already recognize that Denmark is the top leading country with wind power. He presents basis about 52 gigawatt offshore wind power to make a green energy. And he also expectation about successful business model with Korea. So now I just make an indication that you have 1 minute of question, and then, okay, first I would like to ask to Hanu Lee. We just to introduction his career, just to watch these photos, and then I give you 1 minute. So about it's better for us to energy policy or anything. Okay.
예, 감사합니다. 덴마크, 독일에서는 에너지 밴데라는 말을 배웠고, 덴마크는 우리의 모든 자기들의 실패와 성공의 경험을 다 전수하겠다고 했었습니다. 그래서 저희가 그 모든 시스템을 한국에 적용하기 위해서 여러 가지 연구를 했고 협업을 했는데 그것이 한국에 적용되는 과정은 굉장히 순탄치 않았고 지금도 역시 정리되지 않아서 중요한 것은 어떤 아름다운 정책 목표가 있더라도 이것이 비즈니스로 완성될 수 없다면 그 지속 가능성은 담보될 수 없습니다. 그런데 우리가 에너지 전환에서 가장 중요한 역할을 하는 비즈니스맨들에게 정치적으로 법적으로 안정성을 확보해주지 않으면 이 에너지 전환은 지속될 수 없다는 점에서 좀 아쉬움이 있고요. 그래서 결론 1분이기 때문에 결론 내릴 것 같습니다. 기술 혁신 굉장히 중요합니다. 기술 혁신도 중요한데 그거보다는 제도의 안정성, 그래서 시장의 신뢰를 얻는 것, 이것이 에너지 전환의 가장 중요한 요체가 아닌가 이렇게 생각합니다. 1분 안 됐죠?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I just summarized his presentation later. And second, from the German, he emphasized the contribution of hydrogen energy against the climate change crisis. He presented the strategy of a modern hydrogen technology with production, transport, and transform. Also, he introduced about the standard and certification and regulation about that. So I'm asking to second Vice Chairman Wanbin M. Would you please ask, because Denmark is living, you just a recommendation or any comment about the wind power? Okay.
덴마크에 대해서는 뭐 드릴 말씀이 없습니다. 지금 뭐 80%의 재생에너지를 구축하고 있고 우리보다 긴 50년 역사를 갖고 있어서 우리 같은 경우는 이제 본격적으로 시작한 게 한 10년 남짓 되죠. 그러다 보니까 지금 많은 과도기에 있습니다. 개통이 지금 거의 불통이라 사실은 뭐 원대한 계획을 지금 세우고는 있는데 에너지 고속도로니 다들 아마 2050년에는 달성 가능할 겁니다. 근데 문제는 2030년도입니다. 우리가 NDC 40% 감축, 뭐 RE100 기업들이 RE 60%를 달성해야 되는 시기, 그 다음에 우리나라도 또 국제사회에 재생에너지 3배 늘리겠다고 호언을 했었죠. 예, 이것들이 지금 현실로서는 거의 불완전한 거기 때문에 제가 여기서 드리고 싶은 말씀은 우리가 기존에 사고하고 제도를 완전히 혁신적으로 파괴하지 않으면 우리가 30년까지 최소한 거기 반절 따라가기도 힘들 것이다. 무한 얘기로 기존의 틀에서 우리가 하고자 하면은 지금 이뤄낼 것이 거의 없습니다. 지금 뭐 ESS 2.3기가 30년까지 설치한다? 그거 갖고는 안 되고요. 오히려 요새 연구되어지는 뭐 ESS 선박이라든가 ESS 열차를 이용을 해서 우리가 그 남는 전기 컷오프 돼가지고 버려지는 전기를 수도권으로 날른다든가 이러한 뭐 혁신적인 생각이라든가 특히나 요새는 장소가 없어요. 진짜 설치할. 왜냐하면 서울하고 경기도만 개통이 연결되기 때문에 장소가 없는데 무한 얘기로 누구는 뭐 반론하지만 민통선을 개발을 정부가 기획으로 한다든가 민통선이 굉장히 넓은 지역이더라고요. 뭐 이런 우리가 제도의 틀에서 벗어난 행동을 하지 않으면은 이걸 헤쳐나가기가 쉽지 않겠다. 그래서 정부한테 장기적인 계획보다도 이제 한동안에 단기적인 계획도 좀 세워줬으면 하는 바고요. 하여간 뭐 지금 현재로서는 덴마크와 독일에 대해서는 부럽다라는 얘기밖에는 할 도리가 없습니다. 앞으로 많은 조언도 부탁드립니다.
Okay, thank you, Im. You just recommend about the Korean situation, and the last panel discusser is maybe Kim, Dr. Kim, and also Ambassador. He just mentioned about the price of hydrogen and credibility. So after you make the question, and I would like to ask you, Ambassador, you just answer his question. Okay? Okay.
네.
네, 안녕하십니까. 저는 에너지경제연구원에서 수소경제 산업 정책 등을 연구하고 있는 김재경입니다. 오늘 저 독일의 게오르 슈미트 대사님의 강연은 너무나 주옥 같고 너무 인상적이었습니다. 저희 연구를 한번 모시고 저희 연구진들한테 한번 이렇게 들려줬으면 좋겠다라고 생각이 들고요. 또 한 가지는 저희 대통령실이나 아니면 기후부에도 한번 모시고 가서 이제 정책을 이제 앞으로 의사결정하신 분들한테 꼭 들려줬으면 하는 말씀을 너무 잘해주셔서 다시 한번 감사를 드립니다. 제가 좀 질문을 드려야 된다고 해서 질문을 좀 드리자면, 사실 저는 지적해 주셨던 사항들 중에 뭐 가격 이야기도 하셨는데 이거는 우리하고 거의 비슷한 문제이고, 그린 수소 가격이 너무 비싼 것 때문에 지금 우리도 많은 고민들을 하고 있는 것이 사실이고요. 독일과 함께 아마 이 문제는 함께 고민해 나가야 될 문제라고 생각하고요. 제가 이제 질문을 좀 다른 방향을 좀 드려보고 싶습니다. 한국의 수소 경제에 있어서 가장 큰 문제가 무엇이냐라고 질문을 한다면, 저는 개인적으로는 정책에 있어서 수소를 육성하는 또 이행하는 정책에 있어서의 일관성 부족, 안정성 부족, 신뢰 부족이 아닌가 싶습니다. 근데 슈미트 대사님께서 독일은 2020년에 국가 수소 전략을 만드시고, 물론 이제 업데이트를 하셨지만 일관되게 정책을 이루고 계시고 또 상당한 또 신뢰를 주시고, 그래서 이것이 이제 민간 투자에 있어서 가이드라인을 주고 있다는 말씀이 참 이게 많이 인상적이었습니다. 반면에 우리나라는 지금 뭐 정권이 바뀌면 어떻게 될지도 모르고, 또 바뀔 때마다 이제 정책 방향이 너무 빨리빨리 바뀌고, 또 최근에는 이제 공고됐던 시장이 취소되는 등 너무 급격한 변화들을 겪고 있어서 투자를 이제 고민하고 있는 많은 플레이어들이 이제 계속해서 이 정책들을 바라보고 앞으로 이런 대규모 투자들을 할 수 있느냐에 대해 상당한 고민들을 하고 있습니다. 지금 현재는 그런 상황인데요. 제가 정말 질문을 드리고 싶은 거는, 독일은 어떻게 이렇게 일관되고 또 신뢰 가능한 정책들을 추진해 올 수 있었는지, 우리 같은 경우는 끊임없이 이제 정권이라든가 또는 뭐 정권이 바뀔 때마다, 또는 여러 이제 뭐 환경단체라든가 또는 뭐 산업계라든가 여러 요구들이 있고, 그 요구들에 따라서 이제 정책 방향이 많이 이제 바뀌게 되는데, 어떻게 독일에서는, 독일도 비슷할 거라고 생각하거든요. 독일에서는 그런 것들을 잘 조율하셔서 큰 방향들을 잡고 일관되게 가고 계신지, 이걸 한번 질문 좀 드리고 싶습니다.
Okay, I summarize this question. This question is sustainable strategy of German to develop the private investment and grown up. You mean the ramp up of hydrogen economic or hydrogen technology? So just to explain about sustainable strategy, combined hydrogen economy.
Let me see. It works. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And it is indeed something, if you look at the history in Germany, in 1998, we had a change in government and a campaign which was done on let's exit nuclear energy. We had long debates about that, very heated debates, for and against, for about 25 years. And in 1998, you had a government that came to power, that was elected because they said, let's quit nuclear power. Now, where do you go from here? The first idea was, let's try and replace nuclear power with something else. And then the search came. What else do we do? What else do we do? But there were lots of hopes that if the conservatives come back into power, they will reverse it. So you had exactly the problem that some people said, let's just wait. Why should we invest in it? If there's a change of government, they might flip back. And we had a change. Angela Merkel came into power. And then the third big accident that was not mentioned here came, that was Fukushima.
No.
And Fukushima shocked Germans. How can the Japanese, who are so security conscious, who are so careful with their regulations, this is not the old Soviet Union, forgive me, but how can this happen there? And Angela Merkel is a scientist. She's a doctor of physics. And she said, we will stay the course, we will go out of nuclear. Again, there are people who agree with her, there are people who disagree with her. It's normal in a democracy. But that gave a long degree of continuity. So things might have been different. And the development of hydrogen came very much into the forefront because with renewables, you need something to store the excess energy. It's as simple as that. Before that, we had some technological experiments. Cars were already, it's not a new technology, but the whole idea of the strategy and to push it really the way we do it now, it is because it's linked to the system of renewables and to deal with the fluctuations. So, this is how we got where we are now.
Okay, thank you. So, from the presentation of Ambassador Schmidt about everything about the solution for the climate change crisis, so I agree with your opinion. Finally, every time we discuss about climate change exchange more than 30 years ago, now we feel that we mean always a future about climate change crisis, but we feel that the future is come to us in the face, so we have to work more hard and with modern technology. Okay, so already we have to make some discussion with the participant, but we already passed the time. So I would like to say thank you to Ambassador Schmidt for your perfect presentation. And also, I love Schnapps and Appelwein in German. Okay, thank you. 예. 네.
이 원자력 발전소가 안전하다.
예.
근데 그 이후에 그 체르노빌 사건 나고 그 이후에 이분 말씀하셨지만 그 일본의 그 원자력
예.
누수 사건으로 이제 이렇게 됐긴 했지만 그 굉장히 좋은 시설을 가지고 있던 독일이 원자력 발전소를 다 폐기해 버렸습니다. 근데 지금 사실은 기후위기에 대처하는데 가장 좋은 에너지가 사실 원자력이라고 그렇게 얘기를 하잖아요. 아까 유엔 사무총장님이. 그래서 그 지금 독일은 제가 알기로 석탄도 다 이렇게 묻어놓고 이제 원자력 발전소 했는데 혹 지금 수소 에너지를 말씀하셨지만 원자력으로 다시 이렇게 할 그런 정책은 전혀 없는 건가?
그 부분은 제가 대답을 했으면 제가 1년에 한 4번 정도 가니까 함부르크 같은 경우는 우리나라하고 에너지 상황이 거의 비슷하고요. 그 다음에 이제 원자력 제일 값싼 수소를 만들 수가 있습니다. 그래서 혹시 그 부분에 대해서 추가 질문이 있으시면 우리가 커피 브레이크 있으니까 서로 그 상의하시면 되고, 일단 한국의 에너지 상황은 독일하고 비슷한다. Okay, you just let's comment about his question. Okay.
그리고 여기 지금 저
예.
국회의원 덴마크 대사님 가셨는데 제가 덴마크를 몇 년 전에 방문했는데.
Let me have the chance to express his opinion. Okay, okay, please.
It's a very important question because look at Europe, and different countries in Europe have different energy policies. France has a strong focus on nuclear energy. So there's a different calculation in what kind of risks and what kind of rewards can we take. And we have fortunately agreed now in Europe that we also classify nuclear energy as climate friendly. There was a long-standing debate between Germany and France, and our leaders have said, look, from a climate point of view, nuclear is not emitting anything.
Okay.
So, but the discussion is in Germany, and again, I would like to, when you say, it's not just one thing that replaces nuclear. That is the one thing that we thought in the beginning. Take away the 30% of nuclear, replace it with one other thing. I want to say this once again very surely. There's a complete different thought when you decentralize your whole grid and when you decentralize your whole energy structure. It's much more complicated, much more complex. There are a lot of problems on the way. I'm not saying it's a smooth transition because it's a fundamental shift.
Okay, thank you. So we just closed the first session. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ambassador Schmidt. Okay.
네, 우리 자장님과